So, hello everyone. It's been some time since we last had a session, but I'm really excited to be back. And today we are going to dive into a really important grammar concept. So, without wasting any time, let's get right into it. Have you ever noticed why certain sentences feel complete with few words, like the apple fell or the biker slipped, whereas some sentences need more words to complete or give out a clear meaning? For example, Jason has bought what? A brand new car. The child broke what? The phone. So, without the words a brand new car and the phone, the sentences remain meaningless or incomplete. Why does this happen? Well, it's because certain verbs must transfer their action to the next word or words, which in English grammar are called objects. Traditionally, generally, we have been taught that a normal or a general English sentence is written in the format of a subject, verb, and an object. However, not every verb or every sentence requires an object to make the sentence complete or meaningful. So what do we call those verbs that require an object to make the meaning complete? They are called transitive verbs. However, verbs that do not require any object to complete their meaning or to make the sentence complete, they are called intransitive verbs. So hello again and welcome back to another new session where we are going to discuss the topic transitive and intransitive verbs. So what are transitive verbs? Well, a transitive verb is an action verb that requires one or more objects to receive the action of the verb, and the objects that we are going to find will be found out by asking the questions what or whom. Let us go through the examples to understand what I'm talking about. Sentence number one, the teacher taught. Taught is the action, the verb of the sentence, and we need to ask the question what or whom. So let's try to find out. The teacher taught. Taught what? Taught what? A lesson. Since we are getting the answer of what in relation to the verb and the answer is a lesson is the object of the sentence, object of the verb. Second example, Susan helped. Helped whom? Helped whom? Helped Michelle. Again, because we are getting the answer of whom in relation to the verb, the word Michelle is the object of the verb helped. So this sentence also has an object. Third sentence, he kicked. Action is kicked. Kicked what? The ball. The answer is the ball, because we are again getting the answer of what in relation to the verb and the answer is the ball. This is the object of the verb kicked. And because all these sentences have verbs and their objects together, this is why all these sentences are examples of transitive verbs. All these verbs underlined here are transitive verbs. Another very important point that everyone should remember, especially during the exams, is that you need to ask the question only what or whom in relation to the verb to ensure that the word is an object of the verb. If you're getting the answer of any other question like how, when, where, those cannot be considered as the object of the verb. You need to get the answer of what or whom in relation to the verb. Only then can you call the word as an object of the sentence. And then the verb becomes a transitive verb. Now, many of the viewers must be curious as to why transitive verbs are called transitive verbs. We could have called it by any other name, but why transitive? Let me tell you a very interesting fact here. The word transitive actually has derived from the word transitivus. 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 It's actually a Latin word. It's a Latin word which interestingly means to pass or cross over. Do you get it? To pass over, to cross over, meaning the action of the verb crosses over or passes over to the object of the sentence. The action of the verb crosses or passes over to the object. The action of the verb passes over to the object. That is why they are called transitive verbs. Now, I'm pretty sure that most of you were able to understand what transitive verbs are. Now let us move on to the next point. Well, following the logic of transitive verbs, you do realize what intransitive verbs will be. If the first one, the prior one, requires objects to complete the meaning, the latter one, intransitive verbs, will obviously not require any objects. Let us go through these examples here. First, let us try to see what intransitive verbs are. An intransitive verb does not transfer its action to an object, and it expresses an action that is complete on its own without any object. Example number one, the child slept. You might be thinking that there is a word given here, soundly. However, this word is answering the question how. And if you remember, I told you that you need to ask only the questions, only the words what and whom. If you're not getting the answer to these questions, then you cannot call it as an object. So that is why this is not an object. So if it is not an object and the sentence is making complete sense, this verb is an intransitive verb. The second example, he ran quickly. Ran is the action. Quickly is there, but again it is answering the question how. So it is not the object of the verb, and ultimately this verb is an intransitive verb. And the third sentence, the birds are singing, and after this there is a full stop. It doesn't even have any word. In that case, this verb are singing, these two verbs are to be called as intransitive verbs. So tell me, students, do you think the concept of transitive and intransitive verbs is difficult? Well, obviously not. It's a very simple concept. Now then, dear students, in the case of transitive verbs, we can not only use one but two objects. Confused? Let me show you how. Okay, students, now look at these two samples that I have written here. The first sentence says, Rohan gifted his mother a watch. In this sentence, obviously, the word gifted is the action or the verb of the sentence. His mother, this is an object. However, this one is also an object. Interesting, right? In the second sentence, the word gave is the verb of the sentence. Farha is the object, and a novel is also the object of the sentence. And these objects have their own unique names. Do you want to know what they're called? Let's find out. Okay, so the objects that I showed you in the previous examples, they are called actually direct and indirect objects. Now, what are direct and indirect objects? How to identify them? Direct object is the one that receives the action directly, or the item or the thing that is directly affected by the action of the verb. As an example, let me show you here. She gave, the word gave, the verb gave is directly affecting the present here. The action of giving the present was done first. Then this person received the item. A present was the thing that got directly affected by the action of giving. Second sentence, sent is the action, and the sending of letter was done first. This is the item that got affected directly by the action of sending. After that, the parents received the letter. Sending the letter was done first. This is why a letter is called the direct object of the sentence, because it is getting directly affected by the action of the verb. Third sentence, the chef prepared a meal. Preparing of the meal was done first. The action of preparing is directly impacting the object, the thing, meal. That is why it is called the direct object of the sentence. Now, if these are the direct objects of the sentence, what about the other ones? The remaining objects here, me, my parents, and us, they become indirect objects. Because indirect objects are those people, those objects that receive the benefits of the action. She gave a present. Who benefited from the present? Me. I sent a letter. Who benefited? Who got the letter? My parents. Indirect object. Third sentence, the chef prepared a meal. And who got the meal? Us. That is why indirect objects are those words that receive the benefit of the action being done. And direct objects are those words, those objects that get directly affected by the action of the verb. This is what you mean by direct and indirect objects. If you are still confused as to how to identify the direct and the indirect objects, let me give you a shortcut to find out both of these in a very simple way. You must remember, in the previous part, I told you that in order to find the object, you need to ask two questions. Do you remember the two questioning words? The two questioning words were what, and the second one was whom. These are the golden words that are going to help you to identify the direct and the indirect objects. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. If you need to find out the direct object, you need to ask the question what. She gave what? A present. I sent what? A letter. The chef prepared what? A meal. And the second one, in order to find the indirect object, you need to ask the question to or for whom the action was done. To whom was it given or for whom the action was done? For example, she gave whom, me, indirect object. I sent whom, sent to whom, my parents, indirect object. The chef prepared, for whom, us. This is again the indirect object. And this is how you identify the direct and the indirect objects in a sentence. And obviously, if it has an object, the verb will be a transitive verb, because intransitive verbs do not even have objects. So this idea is only related to transitive verbs. I hope you understood. Also remember, students, the placement of the direct and the indirect objects that I showed you here is not going to be the same always. Sometimes the position of the direct and the indirect object might get interchanged. Even if their places get interchanged, they will still remain direct and indirect objects. We are all Indians. Even if we go to America tomorrow, if we live there, we will not be called Americans. We will still be Indians. Even if our position or location was changed, we still remain Indians. So the sentences that I showed you with direct and indirect objects, they did not have any preposition like to or for in them. Like this one here, she bought him a tie. Him is the indirect object. It answers the question whom, and a tie is the direct object that answers the questions what. So generally in the previous sample, you saw that the indirect object was written first, then came the direct object. This was how the pattern was. However, if the sentence has a preposition, like in this sentence, the word for is added here. In that case, the places, they interchange. She bought a tie, which is the direct object, for him. For whom was the action done? Him. So this is the indirect object. So now the places and the position have interchanged. If there are no prepositions in the sentence, then indirect comes first, then the direct one. However, if you add a preposition, then direct object comes first and indirect goes to the last. This point you have to remember regarding the position and the location of direct and indirect object, which change depending upon whether a preposition like to or for is used or not. Looking at the third example here, he gave a book to her. A book is the object and it is the direct object because it is the item or the thing that is getting directly affected by the action of giving, and the person receiving the action is her, which is the indirect object. Remember, students, in order for the object to be an indirect object, it only has to answer to and for. If you are getting the answer of any other preposition, that will not be called as an indirect object. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I will write an example. If you get this sentence that Tina bought a book. Tina bought a book from the shop. In this sentence, there is only one object of the verb. Tina bought what? A book. This is the item getting directly affected by the verb. However, if you think that this is the object of the verb, then you are completely wrong, because the shop and the action of buying are not related at all. The shop is not getting benefited from the action of buying. It is actually the object of the preposition for. If it is object of the preposition, then we do not need to consider it because we only require objects of the verbs because we are discussing transitive and intransitive verbs. So here it has only one direct object of the verb, which is a book. This is the direct object, and that you don't have to identify. I hope it's clear regarding what direct objects are, what indirect objects are, and how do their positions change depending upon the use of to or for only. And remember one more important point, that for the word to be an object, it only has to be either a noun or a pronoun. Tai is a noun, him is a pronoun. So the word only has to be a noun or a pronoun. Only then can you call it as an object. And moreover, if you have changed the places of the direct and indirect objects, only need to find the question for what and whom. And if there are prepositions, then to and for the indirect objects. With all this done and dusted, let us move on to the next part of the video. I have lectured enough. I have taught you what transitive verbs are, what intransitive verbs are, what are direct objects, what are indirect objects. Now it's time to find out whether my efforts were worth it or not. It's time to find out whether you guys actually understood it or not. So let us try to practice a few samples, which I'm very sure that you will easily be able to solve. Let's try to solve these simple questions, where you need to identify the verb, mention whether they are transitive or intransitive, and identify the direct and the indirect objects. Sentence number 1. My sister baked a delicious cake. So obviously the verb is baked here. My sister baked what? A delicious cake. Because you're getting the answer of what, this is the direct object. If it has an object, obviously the word baked is a transitive verb. Second sentence, we brought the thirsty travelers some water. We brought. Brought is the verb. Brought what? Some water. This is the item getting affected directly by the action. So this is the direct object of the sentence. And for whom was this action done? We brought for whom? The thirsty travelers. These are the people who are getting benefited from the action. It is the indirect object of the sentence. This sentence has two objects. If it has two objects, it is obviously again a transitive verb. Sentence number 3. The bright sun shines over the mountains. The bright sun shines. Shines is the verb here. Now, the remaining part of the sentence, do you think we are getting the answer of what or whom? The sun shines. Shines what? No answer. Shines whom? Again, no answer. It is just answering the question where. But students, if you paid attention, you remember that we do not need the answer of where. We only need the answer of what and whom, which ultimately means that this verb has no object and this is an intransitive verb. Question number 3 is intransitive verb. Sentence number 4. She showed the secret map to the tourists. She showed. Showed is the verb. Showed what? The secret map. The item getting directly affected by the action. It is a direct object. And for whom was the action done? Who benefited from the action? The tourist, the indirect object. Because it has objects, the verb is a transitive verb. The last action, the last sentence, the students laughed. Laughed is the verb here. Laughed what? Laughed whom? No answer. The remaining words, these are not actually answering what or whom. That is why this sentence has no object. If it has no object, this verb is again, this is an intransitive verb. So the questions were pretty easy. I hope that you were able to solve these answers. If you were able to solve it, it's wonderful, well and good. If not, you can watch the video multiple times and then come back and look at the samples again. And with this, we have reached to almost the end of the video. But before we end the session, I want to give some homework to you so that you can practice and test yourself. If you forget any point, any idea, anything, you can rewind the video and then come back to the task and try to solve it. You can type the answers, you can type the sentences in the comment section below, and I'll try to make sure that I reply to each and every of your answers. So that's it, guys. I really hope you liked the video. If you did, please show your love and appreciation by giving it a thumbs up. And do not forget to subscribe for more such videos on English grammar and pronunciation. We'll meet again in the next video. Till then, farewell.